Hey, have you ever stopped to think about how you pick up a new skill? Learning an instrument maybe,
Hmm.
and then how different that seems from, say, your phone figuring out which photos have your dog in them.
Right, they seem worlds apart on the surface.
Totally different.
Mm.
But what if there's actually a surprisingly similar method going on underneath?
Well, that's exactly what we've been digging into. We've been looking at these excerpts from Shiva Narayan Takshila Page's paper, Biology Meets Technology, a deep dive into human and machine learnography.
Learnography. Okay.
Yeah, and this whole idea of learnography, thinking about the structured sort of steps involved in how both our brains and artificial systems get knowledge, it gives you a really interesting lens to view intelligence itself.
Absolutely. So our mission today in this deep dive is basically to unpack that.
Right.
We want to look at these fascinating parallels between how your brain, with all its complex wiring, soaks up info,
Mm.
and how AI learns and evolves.
Getting to the core of how knowledge actually sticks, whether that's in neurons or computer bunnied.
Exactly. Okay, so the paper starts off by pointing out some really fundamental similarities in structure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How both our brains and AI rely on these organized networks.
Precisely. When we talk about human learnography, your brain isn't just like one big blob.
No, definitely not.
You've got specific areas like your prefrontal cortex that's big for reasoning, decisions, then the hippocampus, which is crucial for making long-term memories stick, and the cerebellum, key for, coordinating movements and those skills that become automatic. They're all working together constantly.
And the paper brings in this concept of brain pages. I like that term. It's like visualizing internal filing cabinets
Mhm.
or maps where your brain organizes stuff.
It's a helpful metaphor, yeah. These internal maps are modules for storing knowledge.
And it's as knowledge gets transferred through these neural circuits and motor pathways.
That's right. And what's really fascinating is how these different brain parts talk to each other. You've got the thalamus, kind of like a central relay station,
Okay.
taking in sensory info and sending it where it needs to go for memory. Then the cerebellum helps fine-tune how you actually do the learned skills. That's that motor science part.
Right, the doing part.
Yeah, and the basal ganglia, they're really important for habit formation, things you do without thinking, and learning from rewards.
Like cause and effect.
Exactly. And the hippocampus, like we said, is busy creating those long-term memories, building those brain pages. It's a highly interconnected system.
It really does sound like a specialized team all focused on helping you learn and remember things. Okay, let's switch gears then. Machine learnography, AI. We're
Yeah.
talking artificial neural networks, ANNs.
Mm-hmm.
These are basically designed to mimic that biological learning process, right?
Exactly. You can think of an ANN as having layers.
Mhm.
There's an input layer that gets the raw data. It could be pixels in a photo, words in your search query.
Got it. Raw stuff.
Then you have what are called hidden layers. That's where the real processing happens, using math models, activation functions, and this key technique called backpropagation to sort of analyze the data.
Backpropagation. We'll probably come back to that.
We will. And finally, there's an output layer that gives you the result, identifying the dog, showing the search results, whatever it is.
Okay. And the paper mentions the different ways AI learns: supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement. It's interesting how those kind of mirror some ways we learn too.
Definitely. Supervised learning, where you give it labeled data, that feels a bit like a teacher showing you examples, doesn't it?
Yeah, like flashcards or something.
Right. Unsupervised is where the AI has to find patterns on its own, more like exploring data and seeing what emerges.
Discovering things.
And reinforcement learning with its rewards and penalties. Well, that's very much like learning through trial and error, maybe in a game or figuring out a new task.
So even though one's biological and one's silicon, they both seem to rely on creating and strengthening connections based on experience. Is that fair?
That's a great way to put it. In your brain, it's synaptic plasticity connections between brain cells getting stronger or weaker. In ANNs, it's about adjusting the weights, the importance of connections between the artificial neurons.
So the underlying idea, learning by association and repetition, is surprisingly similar.
It really is. That's a key takeaway.
Okay, structure's covered. Now, how does knowledge transfer actually succeed? Start with us humans again. The paper talks about brain page development being crucial. What does that actually involve?
So brain page development is essentially how you build up those internal libraries of knowledge. The paper points out a few key steps. First, there's the straightforward book-to-brain transfer, just absorbing information, like when you read or study.
Okay, the input.
Then there's something they call cyclizide rehearsal, or TCR. It sounds fancy, but it's basically just repetition.
Practice, practice,
Yes,
practice.
exactly. Practicing something over and over embeds it in your neural circuits.
Hmm.
Task-based learning, actually doing the thing, really solidifies it, especially the motor commands.
Makes sense.
And this one's interesting, small teacher leadership, or peer-based learnography. The idea is that teaching something to someone else actually forces you to understand and remember it better.
Oh, yeah, I totally get that. Explaining something makes you really organize your thoughts, doesn't it?
It really does. And all this builds those brain page maps, that internal library, which allows for hopefully quick and accurate retrieval later on.
Right. And then there's the motor science aspect. How does that fit in?
Well, it's not just about knowing something in your head, it's about being able to do it. Skill automation is a big part. When a task becomes almost automatic, it frees up your conscious brain power.
Like driving a car, eventually.
Perfect example. Error correction is also vital, constantly tweaking your actions based on feedback. And again, repetition leads to increased speed and efficiency. Engaging those motor circuits during learning connects the knowledge to faster recall and practical application.
So practice really does make perfect, or at least much, much better.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the machines? How does machine learnography ensure successful knowledge transfer for AI?
Well, for AI, it's fundamentally about data-driven model training. The AI learns, stores information, retrieves it, all based on the data it's fed.
Data's key.
Absolutely. And those learning methods we mentioned, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement, they're how AI adapts to new info in different situations, much like how our intelligence lets us handle novelty.
And the paper mentioned specific optimization techniques, gradient descent and that backpropagation thing again. Can you simplify those a bit?
Sure. Think of gradient descent as the AI trying to find the best way to understand something by making small adjustments. Imagine trying to walk down a hill in the fog. You take small steps, feel the slope, adjust. Gradient descent helps the AI tweak its internal settings or weights to minimize errors.
Okay, like fine-tuning.
Exactly. And backpropagation is the method it uses to figure out which adjustments to make. It calculates how much error each connection contributed and sends that information back through the network to correct the weights. It's how the network learns from its mistakes.
Ah, okay, so it's learning from feedback,
Okay.
essentially.
Precisely, like synaptic plasticity in the brain, but algorithmic. And then there's also neurosymbolic AI I mentioned, which is a newer approach trying to blend logical reasoning with deep learning's pattern finding, try and get closer to our complex problem solving.
Interesting. So these techniques are what let AI learn incredibly fast, cut down errors, adapt on the fly.
Sure.
It really does sound like it mirrors how our brain page development leads to better knowledge use.
The parallels in the goals, speed, accuracy, adaptation, are quite striking, which naturally leads to the final part of the paper, thinking about how human and machine learnography might actually connect in the future.
Right, bridging the gap, brain-computer interfaces, BCIs.
Yeah.
That always sounds like pure science fiction.
It does, yeah. But the potential benefits are pretty significant, at least theoretically. Imagine directly transferring knowledge from an AI into your brain pages. Learning could become incredibly fast. AI could also potentially help with memory retention, maybe counteracting memory loss. And think about combining human intuition and creativity with AI's processing power for problem solving. The potential for innovation is huge.
It's mind-bending stuff. And then there was the Takshila Happiness Classrooms concept based on this Takshila model.
Yeah.
What's the idea there?
So the vision there is integrating AI learning assistants into education. Not to replace teachers, but to augment.
Okay, how?
Well, AI could create truly personalized learning paths, adapting in real time to a student's specific strengths and weaknesses. It might even help automate some parts of building those brain pages, making studying from books or digital materials more efficient.
Streamlining the book-to-brain part.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And the overall aim is error-free knowledge transfer, reducing learning gaps, minimizing that feeling of being overwhelmed by information.
So it's about using smart tools to make learning more effective and tailored for each person. That's a really compelling vision for the future of education.
It really is. And the paper kind of wraps up by stressing this core idea again. Both human and machine learning, despite the different hardware, rely on these structured pathways for acquiring and transferring knowledge.
Brain circuits and motor skills for us.
Neural networks and optimization algorithms for AI. And the future might lie in the synergy between them, enabled by things like BCIs and AI in education.
So the big takeaway seems to be that whether it's neurons firing or algorithms crunching data, the fundamental job of structured knowledge transfer is surprisingly consistent.
Exactly. And the really exciting, maybe slightly scary part is how these two worlds might merge or collaborate much more closely in the future.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to chew on, doesn't it?
It does. What are the implications if we can seamlessly integrate human and machine intelligence? For learning, yes, but also for work, for creativity, for society as a whole.
Yeah, what would it actually mean if knowledge transfer became truly universal, truly efficient for everyone? It's a fundamental shift to consider.
A profound shift in how we even define intelligence and learning. Definitely food for thought.
Absolutely. And if you, the listener, want to dive even deeper into these concepts, the paper mentions you can visit the Taxila page for more information on system learnography. Sounds like there's a lot more to explore there.
For sure. It's a fascinating intersection of biology and technology.